Ever find yourself in the grocery aisle, trying to decide between regular sugar and its healthier alternative in a pretty package? Do you think you're making a better choice by picking up a drink labeled 0 calories? Well, you might be surprised. Today, we're not just going to talk about artificial sweeteners. We're going to pull back the curtain on this multi-billion-dollar industry and find out if this guilt-free sweetness is truly as safe as it seems. So, let's trace back to where it all began. In the late 19th century, doctors began noticing a clear link between sugar and various health problems. This spurred chemists to search for alternatives. That's how the first artificial sweetener, saccharin, was discovered, quite by accident. Ever since, the quest for the perfect sweet molecule with 0 calories has been relentless. So let's kick things off with the main question. Why exactly have we declared war on sugar? Not long ago, it was just a sweet treat, a pleasant addition to life. But now, for anyone mindful of their health, it's become the ultimate villain. And frankly, for good reason. The problem is, sugar has become truly ubiquitous. It's not just hiding in desserts and sweets. You'll find it in bread, ketchup, healthy yogurts, and even sausages. Keeping track of how much we consume has become incredibly challenging. The consequences of this sugar overload are well known. It's not just the extra pounds that pile on, thanks to what we call empty calories, calories that offer 0 nutritional value. It's also those constant sugar highs and lows, that sudden burst of energy, followed by an equally sharp crash and an intense craving for something sweet again. Sound familiar? And it's against this backdrop that the immense popularity of sugar substitutes has surged. Essentially, they have 2 main missions. The first is to help us manage our weight. The idea seems ingenious. The same sweet taste, without the calories. The second, and equally crucial mission, is to assist people with diabetes. For them, regular sugar can be genuinely dangerous, causing a rapid spike in blood glucose. Sweeteners, however, offer them the chance to enjoy something sweet without risking their health. So, our intentions are clearly noble, to be both slim and healthy. But is it truly that simple? To navigate this complex world of sugar substitutes, let's start by bringing some order. Broadly speaking, all sugar alternatives can be divided into 2 main categories, natural and artificial. And much like in a good movie, each of these teams has its heroes, its villains, and its characters with a more ambiguous standing. Let's begin with the natural team. This group comprises substances derived from natural sources. Examples include stevia, extracted from the leaves of the stevia plant, erythritol, found naturally in some fruits, and the increasingly popular monk fruit sweetener, derived from the monk fruit itself. Sounds wonderfully wholesome, doesn't it? But here's the catch. The word natural doesn't mean someone simply dried a leaf and popped it into your packet. More often than not, these are the result of complex industrial processing and purification. At the other end of the spectrum, we have the artificial or synthetic sweeteners. These are the creations of chemical laboratories. Their molecules simply don't occur in nature. This group includes well-known names like aspartame, sucralose, and saccharin. Their primary appeal is their incredible sweetness, often hundreds of times sweeter than sugar, coupled with the fact that they contain 0 calories. However, it's precisely their chemical origin that sparks the most debate and fear. And coming up, we'll be taking a much closer look at each of these teams. Let's start with the undisputed queen of natural sugar substitutes, a true star on health food shelves. Stevia. Marketers tout it as the perfect choice. And why not? It's derived from the leaves of a plant that South American indigenous peoples have called honey herb for centuries, using it to sweeten drinks. What could seem safer or more natural than that? You just take a leaf, grind it up, and presto, you have a healthy sweetness. But here's where things get interesting. That white powder, or those clear drops we see in stores, bear little resemblance to the whole leaf. These are highly purified extracts, known as stevioglycosides. Most often this is a compound called riboside A. To obtain it, the leaves undergo a multi-step process, including alcohol extraction. So, it's no longer just a simple herb, but a product of serious food engineering. Furthermore, pure stevia has a distinctive characteristic that manufacturers often try to conceal: a bitter, licorice-like aftertaste. This is precisely why it's often blended with other sweeteners. So, while stevia is indeed natural in origin, it's not as simple as it first appears. Next up on our list we have erythritol. If stevia is the queen of sugar substitutes, then erythritol is certainly its charming prince. It belongs to the sugar alcohol family, and some even refer to it as melon sugar, because it's naturally found in small amounts in fruits like melons, grapes, and pears. Visually, it's a perfect match. A white crystalline powder, looking just like regular sugar. And the best part? It's practically calorie-free. Our bodies barely absorb it, passing it through almost entirely unchanged. This is precisely why erythritol has become a superstar in the keto diet and a staple in various low-carb desserts. It has no impact on blood sugar or insulin levels, making it particularly appealing for those with diabetes. However, just like any fairy tale prince, erythritol comes with a bit of a secret. For many, especially when consumed in larger quantities, their introduction to erythritol can conclude, quite emphatically, it can cause bloating, gas, and diarrhea. This happens because any unabsorbed erythritol makes its way to the large intestine, where our gut bacteria get to work on it, fermenting it, and throwing quite the party. So, if you're keen to give erythritol a try, remember to start with very small doses. Now let's turn our attention to xylitol, a substance with a name that might sound like it belongs to a Norse god. It's also known as birch sugar, because it was originally extracted from birch bark. Xylitol, much like erythritol, is classified as a sugar alcohol. In terms of sweetness and appearance, it's almost indistinguishable from regular sugar, but it contains about 40% fewer calories. What truly made xylitol famous, its superpower, if you will, is its remarkable benefit to dental health. Unlike sugar, it doesn't feed the bacteria that cause tooth decay. Instead, it actually inhibits their growth. This is precisely why xylitol is a key ingredient in most sugar-free chewing gums and toothpastes. It might seem like the perfect sugar substitute. However, xylitol has a dark and extremely dangerous side that everyone needs to be aware of. For humans, it's generally safe when consumed in moderation. But for dogs, xylitol is a deadly poison. Even a small amount can cause a rapid drop in blood sugar, seizures, liver failure, and even death in dogs. Therefore, if you have a dog, all products containing xylitol must be kept at a place that is absolutely inaccessible to them. This isn't just a cautionary tale. It's critically important information that could save your pet's life. Let's turn our attention eastward and meet a relatively new player on the market. Monk fruit, also known as luo han guo, or Buddha fruit. This small green melon-like fruit has been used for centuries in traditional Chinese medicine. Sounds pretty exotic and promising, doesn't it? Monk fruit gets its sweetness from unique antioxidants called mogrosides. These are 150-200 times sweeter than sugar, yet contain no calories and don't affect blood sugar levels. Unlike stevia, monk fruit has no bitter aftertaste, making it very appealing to manufacturers. It really seems like the perfect natural sweetener, without any downsides. But why hasn't it completely taken over the market and replaced its competitors yet? Firstly, growing and processing monk fruit is quite expensive, which makes its price higher than that of, say, stevia. Secondly, its intense sweetness makes it incredibly difficult to dose. You literally need a microscopic pinch. That's why you'll almost never find 100% pure monk fruit in stores. More often, it's a blend where the bulk consists of familiar fillers, like erythritol, with the monk fruit extract itself making up only a small fraction. So when you buy something labeled monk fruit, you're usually buying erythritol with monk fruit. And now, for a little exposé. Let's talk about agave syrup. You've likely seen it in the healthy aisles of your grocery store. A pretty bottle, a golden, honey-like liquid, and all those promising labels. Natural, organic, low glycemic index. Marketers have skillfully crafted an image of a super-healthy nectar, almost a miracle cure. It's often recommended by vegans, raw food enthusiasts, and health-conscious individuals alike. Sounds great, right? But as always, the devil is in the details. Yes, agave syrup does indeed have a low glycemic index, meaning it doesn't cause a rapid spike in blood sugar. But why is that? The reason is simple. It's not primarily glucose. It's almost entirely fructose. And that, my friends, is where the main trap lies. The fructose concentration in agave syrup can soar to an astonishing 85 to 90%. That's even higher than the infamous high fructose corn syrup, which is widely considered a major culprit in the U.S. obesity epidemic. While an excess of fructose might not spike your blood sugar directly, it delivers a powerful blow to your liver. Your liver is the organ tasked with processing all that fructose, and it converts any surplus directly into fat. This is a direct path to fatty liver disease, insulin resistance, and metabolic syndrome. So, that healthy agave syrup, in reality, turns out to be a true Trojan horse. Of course, when we talk about natural sweeteners, honey and maple syrup always come to mind. We tend to view them with particular fondness. After all, they're not some lab-created chemicals, they're nature's own gifts. Honey brings to mind industrious bees and fragrant flower fields, while maple syrup conjures images of picturesque Canadian forests. What's more, they do offer genuine health benefits. Honey contains enzymes, vitamins, and beneficial antibacterial compounds, while maple syrup is a good source of manganese and zinc. However, amidst all this positivity, we often overlook a crucial point. For our bodies, our pancreas, and our metabolism, both honey and maple syrup are fundamentally just sugar. Yes, they come with a small bonus of micronutrients, but they are still sugar. They're made up of the same glucose and fructose. They're just as calorie-dense and impact blood sugar levels in much the same way, even if their effect is slightly less abrupt than refined sugar. Therefore, considering them as completely harmless or diet-friendly sweeteners is a major misconception. Drizzling honey over pancakes or oatmeal instead of using sugar doesn't make the dish less caloric or better for weight loss. It's simply swapping one form of sugar for another, one that's a bit more aromatic and comes with a few extra beneficial compounds. Don't kid yourself. Moderation is key, even here. Okay, so we've covered natural sweeteners. Now let's dive into the world of artificial sweeteners. Kicking off our discussion is a true rock star of the 90s and 2000s. Aspartame. You're undoubtedly familiar with its taste. It was the key ingredient that sweetened all those iconic diet colas and sugar-free chewing gums. Aspartame is about 200 times sweeter than sugar, and its discovery, like that of many chemical compounds, was purely accidental. However, aspartame's reputation is quite scandalous. Few, if any, other sugar substitutes have been surrounded by as many myths, fears, and urban legends. For decades, it was blamed for everything imaginable, from headaches and depression to multiple sclerosis and even brain cancer. Even today, countless exposé articles, some dating back to the last century, still circulate widely online. Modern science, however, takes a much calmer view of aspartame. Hundreds of studies, conducted by major health organizations worldwide, including the American FDA and the European EFSA, have deemed it safe within acceptable daily intake levels. However, there is one group of people for whom aspartame is absolutely contraindicated: individuals with phenylketonuria, a rare genetic disorder. But even despite these official verdicts, a lingering cloud of notoriety still follows aspartame, and many manufacturers are now opting to replace it with more modern alternatives. Taking the baton from aspartame, sucralose is now in the spotlight as a new generation sweetener. Its primary marketing slogan is incredibly compelling: made from sugar, so it tastes like sugar. And it's largely true. Sucralose indeed offers a very clean, sugar-like taste, free from any off-notes or unpleasant aftertastes, which gives it a significant edge over many competitors. What's more, it's a whopping 600 times sweeter than sugar, yet our bodies barely absorb it, resulting in 0 calories. But how does sugar transform into a calorie-free substance? Through a clever chemical trick. During production, the sugar molecule, sucrose, undergoes a slight modification. 3 of its hydroxyl groups are replaced with 3 chlorine atoms. And this is where many people's eyebrows tend to rise. Chlorine? The very same chemical used to disinfect swimming pools? Yes, exactly. Manufacturers assure us that the chlorine within the sucralose molecule is in a highly stable, bound state, and poses no danger to the human body. Numerous studies support this claim. Consequently, sucralose is widely considered one of the safest artificial sweeteners. However, the mere fact that chlorine is present in something we eat continues to fuel intense debate and remains the main point of contention for its critics. And now, let's turn our attention to a true veteran, the original artificial sweetener, the granddaddy of them all, saccharin. Its story began back in the late 19th century, in 1879, and, as is often the case with groundbreaking discoveries, it happened entirely by accident. Chemist Konstantin Fahlberg was working with coal tar derivatives when, one evening at dinner, he noticed that the bread roll he was eating was unusually sweet. It turned out he simply hadn't washed his hands after leaving the lab. And that's how the world first learned about saccharin. Saccharin gained immense popularity during both world wars, When regular sugar was in short supply, it's 300 to 400 times sweeter than sugar and contains 0 calories. However, it does have one notable characteristic that many people dislike: a distinct metallic or bitter aftertaste. The biggest blow to saccharin's reputation came in the 1970s, when a study in rats suggested a link between its consumption and bladder cancer. This caused widespread panic. However, it was later discovered that the mechanism of cancer development in rats was specific to these rodents and not applicable to humans. Numerous subsequent studies in humans found no such link to cancer. Saccharin was cleared of all accusations, but, as the saying goes, the damage to its reputation was already done, and while it remains approved and in use today, its popularity has significantly waned. Rounding out our list of synthetic compounds is a substance with a rather tongue-twisting name: acesulfame potassium, or simply ACE-K, as it's often abbreviated. This is another high-intensity sweetener, roughly 200 times sweeter than sugar. Like its counterparts, it passes through the body undigested and unchanged, adding 0 calories to your diet. However, ACE-K comes with a unique characteristic: you'll almost never find it used by itself. Why? That's because, in its pure form, especially at higher concentrations, it can have a bitter aftertaste, similar to saccharin. So, manufacturers came up with a clever solution. They discovered that by blending acesulfame potassium with other sweeteners, such as aspartame or sucralose, a synergistic effect occurs. This means that together they create a cleaner, more intense sweet taste than either could achieve on its own. Their subtle, bitter notes are effectively masked. So, if you pick up a can of diet soda or a protein bar and check the ingredients list, you're highly likely to see this exact sweet duo, or even a triplet, listed. This is a prime example of how food technologists blend various compounds to achieve that perfect, sugar-like taste. All right, we've talked about the individual players. Now let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture, asking the crucial question: how does this entire army of artificial sweeteners actually impact our bodies? We'll start at the very core of our internal universe, our gut. In recent years, scientists have realized that our gut isn't just a simple tube for digesting food. It's home to trillions of bacteria, known as the microbiome, which influences everything from our immunity to our mood. And these tiny residents are very particular about what they're fed. While regular sugar isn't exactly their best friend, artificial sweeteners, they can be a real enemy. Research indicates that some of them, like saccharin, sucralose, and aspartame, can disrupt the delicate balance of our gut flora. They can suppress the growth of beneficial bacteria, and on the flip side, encourage the proliferation of harmful ones. What could this lead to in the long run? A whole host of problems, ranging from simple bloating and digestive upset to more serious issues like impaired glucose tolerance. The irony is this: a substance we consume to control sugar could ultimately make our bodies worse at handling it. Our bacteria simply don't recognize this chemistry they're being fed, and they react to it in quite unpredictable ways. Now let's shift our focus a bit higher, from the gut to our brain, the body's ultimate command center. Our brain, it turns out, is a massive, sweet tooth, and its relationship with sugar is both ancient and incredibly strong. Throughout evolution, the taste of sweetness was a vital signal to humans, practically screaming, "This is safe, it's packed with energy, eat it." When we eat something sweet, our brain's reward system kicks into high gear, flooding us with dopamine, that feel-good hormone. Now let's imagine what happens when we introduce artificial sweeteners. Your tongue registers that sweet taste and sends an excited signal to the brain. Energy's on its way. Get ready. The brain gears up. It anticipates. But that energy, those calories, never actually arrive. Fool it once, twice, a third time, and eventually your brain starts to get confused. That fundamental link between sweetness and energy begins to weaken, even to fray. Some studies even suggest that this kind of trickery can have a few undesirable consequences. First, without the expected reward, the brain might start demanding it with even greater intensity. This could lead to intensified cravings for real, caloric sweets. Second, your body might actually forget how to adequately respond to real sugar when it finally does enter your system. Simply put, we're trying to outsmart nature, but our brain is far too complex a system to be fooled so easily. All right, we've tackled the brain, but what about hormones? Our primary focus here is insulin, the body's main regulator of blood sugar levels. The logic, at first glance, seemed pretty straightforward. Artificial sweeteners contain no glucose, so they shouldn't raise blood sugar. And if blood sugar doesn't rise, there's no need for the pancreas to produce insulin. This is precisely why they're used in managing diabetes. But even here, things aren't so simple. Recent years have brought a growing body of research, revealing that our bodies are far more sophisticated than we ever imagined. It turns out that insulin production can be triggered not just by actual glucose entering the bloodstream, but surprisingly, just by a sweet taste. This mechanism is often referred to as the anticipatory insulin response. Our taste receptors detect sweetness and send an advanced signal to the pancreas. Heads up, sugar's on its way. And while most artificial sweeteners don't cause the same powerful insulin surge as real sugar, some of them can still trigger a slight response. It's like the body gets ready for a big party, only to find no one shows up. This reaction is highly individual and depends on the specific sweetener, but the very existence of this response gives us pause for thought. It just goes to show that trying to swap out one component in a complex system without any ripple effects is an almost impossible task. And now we come to the big question, the one that millions of people are asking. Do sugar substitutes really help you lose weight? After all, that's the primary reason most people buy them. You cut out caloric sugar, replace it with a calorie-free alternative, and voila, the pounds should just melt away. It certainly sounds logical, but in real life, this simple math doesn't always add up. Why is that? There are several reasons, and most of them come down to our psychology. The first and main trap is what's known as compensation. When we opt for a diet soda, we feel like heroes, having just saved a ton of calories. And what do? We give ourselves permission to have that extra slice of cake, or a bigger portion of fries. I saved on the drink, so I can totally afford this, we rationalize to ourselves. Consequently, the total daily calorie intake doesn't just stay the same. It often ends up increasing. The second problem is the brain's deception we've already discussed. Without getting true satisfaction from empty sweetness, our brain keeps seeking that gratification in other foods, often leading to overeating. Therefore, while short-term studies occasionally show a modest weight reduction, in the long run, sugar substitutes rarely prove to be effective allies in the fight against excess weight. There's another crucial aspect of using sugar substitutes that many people don't even consider: their behavior when heated. We don't just use them in cold drinks. We also add them to baked goods, cottage cheese dishes, casseroles, and even make jams and compotes with them. And this is where we might encounter some unpleasant surprises. The truth is, not all sweeteners are heat-stable. This means their chemical structure can break down at high temperatures. Aspartame is one of the most well-known examples. When heated above 80 degrees Celsius, it starts to degrade, losing its sweetness and forming new chemical compounds, including diketopiperazine and traces of methanol. While manufacturers assure us that these amounts are negligible and safe, the very fact of such a transformation isn't very comforting. Sucralose and stevia are generally considered more stable and are often recommended specifically for baking. However, even with sucralose, some studies suggest that at very high temperatures, above 120 degrees Celsius, especially in the presence of fats, it can form potentially harmful organochlorine compounds. Therefore, if you're planning to bake or cook with a sugar substitute, always read the instructions on the packaging carefully. Manufacturers always specify whether their product is suitable for high-heat applications. Let's dive into another clever psychological trick marketing plays on us. It's called the health halo effect. The concept is quite straightforward. When we see an enticing phrase on a product's packaging, like sugar-free, low-calorie, organic, or fitness, a shimmering halo of healthfulness seems to form around that product in our minds. We automatically assume this product is much healthier than it actually is, and this perception of health extends to all its other characteristics. Subconsciously, we believe it's not just lower in sugar, but also in fat, and we even start to think it's almost therapeutic. So what happens next? We drop our guard. We might eat an entire packet of diet cookies in one sitting, justifying it by thinking it's sugar-free, so it must be fine. We grab a fitness bar without checking the ingredients, only to find it's packed with a huge amount of fats and quick-absorbing carbohydrates in the form of syrups. A sugar-free label doesn't automatically equate to a healthy product. It simply tells us that one ingredient has been replaced by another. Yet we fall for this trick repeatedly, allowing the health halo to cloud our judgment and override our ability to read labels properly. And of course, we can't talk about this without mentioning the concept of dosage. Even the most beneficial substance in the world can become toxic if consumed in excess. And crucially, even for controversial chemical compounds, a safe dose exists. For every approved sugar substitute, regulatory bodies, such as the World Health Organization, establish what's known as the acceptable daily intake, or ADI. This represents the amount of a substance that, according to current scientific data, a person can safely consume every day throughout their entire life without any health risks. These limits are typically set with a very generous safety margin. For instance, to exceed the daily acceptable intake for aspartame, an adult would need to drink roughly 15 to 20 cans of diet soda in a single day. This seems practically impossible for most people. However, here's the catch. Today, sugar substitutes are added to an enormous variety of products. Think yogurts, dairy desserts, sauces, beverages, protein powders, vitamins, even cough drops. We rarely keep track of how much of all this we consume in a day. We don't typically add up the milligrams of sucralose from our morning coffee with the milligrams from our lunch yogurt. So, while reaching a genuinely dangerous dose is certainly challenging, the continuous intake of these substances from so many different sources can create a surprisingly high cumulative burden on our bodies. And finally, perhaps the most vital point in our discussion is individuality. We often focus on general guidelines, large-scale studies, and average outcomes. But we frequently forget that each of us is a unique biochemical system. What works perfectly for one person could be entirely wrong for someone else. You could drink coffee with stevia for years and feel perfectly great, while your friend might experience terrible bloating from just a drop. Your colleague might love diet soda with aspartame, but it gives you a headache. Some people can't tolerate sugar alcohols like erythritol and xylitol at all, while for others, they're the ideal solution. How our body, our microbiome, and our nervous system react to any substance is incredibly individual. That's why blindly trusting ads, blogger advice, or even scientific articles isn't always the right way to go. The ultimate expert on your health is your own body. It's crucial to learn to listen to it. Try different options, track your sensations, and notice how your body responds to various products. There isn't one best sweetener for everyone. There's only the one that suits you personally. But here's the most interesting, and perhaps most shocking, revelation. While we debate whether aspartame or erythritol is worse, we're missing the bigger picture. Increasingly, new research suggests the primary danger of sugar substitutes isn't their chemical makeup, but rather how they perpetuate our dependence on sweet flavors. They don't help us break free from sugar. Instead, they create the illusion of a safe solution. We continue to feed our sweet tooth dragon, only now it's on a diet. As a result, our brains and taste buds never truly learn to appreciate moderately sweet or unsweetened foods, like berries or vegetables. We remain trapped in a cycle of constant cravings for sweetness. So, what's the bottom line? Sugar substitutes are neither absolute evil nor a magic bullet. They're a tool that can be beneficial in certain situations, for instance, for people with diabetes. But for most people striving for a healthy lifestyle, the best approach isn't to seek out clever sugar replacements, but rather to gradually reduce sugar intake and rediscover the natural flavors of food. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope you learned something new and useful. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our future breakdowns. Now a question for you. Which sugar substitute do you use? And have you noticed any strange effects? Share your experience in the comments below. Let's discuss.